Thank you. And good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission. Ms. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Your first item is to conduct your first citizens' participation period.
It's the first time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak on a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of public comment.
Thank you. Next is to approve your agenda, and your agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 3 is to receive the general manager's report, and we do have a few slides, or a few conversations we'd like to have with you. First, we'd like to recognize an outstanding operator for TransDev, Victoria Kish. Do we have Victoria Kish in the audience with us? And Victoria, can you come down? Victoria is a paratransit road supervisor rising through the ranks since starting as an operator in 2002. Ms. Kish has trained more than 100 of TransDev's operators in first aid and CPR. In June, she was called to a scene of a 3-car crash where she noticed that a passenger in one of the vehicles appeared to have head trauma. She helped keep the injured person at the crash scene calm, as well as the operator and passengers aboard the paratransit vehicle. In addition, she secured the scene and provided water to all parties, including Las Vegas Metro. So thank you for your professionalism, Victoria, and we congratulate you.
Thank you very much. This is an honor. I love my job, I love TransDev, and I love what paratransit does to the community.
Aww.
Thank you.
Thank you.
17 years in paratransit. I've been here 17 years in paratransit. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to recognize an operator from Keolis, Mr. Mark Dumas. Do we have Mark Dumas? This past April, Mr. Dumas was driving Route 202, Flamingo. While he was stopped on Flamingo and Rainbow, he heard several people shouting, "Fire! Fire!" He looked outside and saw there was a man on fire. Yeah, he quickly grabbed the fire extinguisher from the bus to put out the flames and ultimately saved the man's life. So we'd like to say excellent job, Mr. Dumas, and thank you for being a hero.
Thank you very much.
We have one more recognition. Next, we'd like to recognize an outstanding officer from Allied Universal, Anthony Jameson. Anthony, are you with us? Officer Jameson? Come on down. Officer Jameson is the swing shift supervisor at the Bonneville Transit Center. While performing his duties in June, he observed a customer in danger of being struck by a coach that was approaching a bay. The customer seemed unaware that she was crossing in front of a moving coach. He ran towards the customer and pulled her out of the way of the coach. The quick actions of Officer Jameson resulted in the customer being quickly and safely removed from the dangerous situation. So thank you, Officer Jameson.
Thank you for your recognition. It was unexpected tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you're taking your seats, I'd like to announce that our August 9th board meeting, so our next board meeting, will take place in Boulder City for a very special reason. So we won't be meeting here, and I need to let everybody in the audience know as well, those who are interested, we will not be meeting in the chambers here. We will be meeting at the City Hall in Boulder City, and the reason being, we are celebrating the grand opening of I-11. Yeah, very exciting. We are excited to complete this long-awaited project, and once the board meeting wraps up, we will have everyone join us for the special celebration around 11 a.m. Again, that's on August 9th, so pretty exciting. We're going to have the very first phase of I-11, the very first segment of I-11 done, and it's certainly something very tangible that we can point to the federal government to show that we were committed and that Arizona is committed as well, and we look forward to future funds from our government to continue funding it, so yeah. Yeah.
Councilwoman.
The meeting starts at the same time, but
meeting-
the celebration of 11 is at 11 o'clock.
Correct.
Excuse me?
Regional flood will
I mean, regional flood at 8:30, 9 o'clock, our regular meeting, and then 11 o'clock, because it's Interstate 11. I noticed that at 11 o'clock, we're going to open it. I just want to make sure my timing was right.
I'd love to tell you that was on purpose. Yeah, you know what? That was on purpose. But
Good catch.
we're good. All right, before I wrap up General Manager's report, I know our General Counsel has an item to share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. This is an update on the peer review for paratransit. We were notified, or staff was notified this week, that our contractor for the paratransit peer review is no longer able to complete its review. We directed staff, and staff has already reached out to the entity that was ranked second for the RFP process, and they're working towards transitioning the responsibilities as soon as possible so that the review can be completed as expected. Staff is working to resolve the matter as quickly as possible, and we believe that there's going to be a slight delay until the review can be completed. Right now, what we expect will occur is that the peer review will be completed and presented to the board at the latest by the October board meeting. I know that's a sensitive issue, and we want to be respectful of those that have come before us. We're trying to make sure everyone is updated, and if there are questions concerning this issue, we're going to stay a little bit after the meeting to talk to anyone that wants any further details.
Thank you. Council, are we able to transition the contract and let them begin the work and then bring it to the board? Or do we have to wait for August board meeting to approve the transition?
No, we're able to and have transitioned it, and that process has started. We don't need any further board action in that regard.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. That concludes your General Manager's report. Next is to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's report from Director Rudy Malfabon.
Thank you, Tina. Wanted to say I'm back. I missed the last couple of meetings due to some commitments for AASHTO Safety Committee, and had an audit hearing to attend last month, so I appreciate my Deputy Director, Tracy Larkin, giving you an update last month on projects. The Centennial Bowl Phase 3C project is one that constructs, it's in the northwest part of the Valley 95 and 215 Beltway interchange. Currently, had received bids on Phase 3C, and we received only one bid, so we had started looking into that. We're doing our bid analysis right now, so we anticipate taking it to our board for consideration for award next month. But I just wanted to make a few comments about that. And we did check out with some of the other contractors that pulled some bid sets but did not submit a formal bid on that project. They just felt that because of the what we're building on that project is some more flyover ramps, and they require a lot of false work. It's a cast-in-place concrete structure. It requires a lot of that temporary support from false work, as we call it. They felt that they were not in a good position to be competitive with Las Vegas Paving, who built the last phase with that same kind of concept for that last flyover bridge that they built. So that's why we only received one bid. We just wanted to make sure that it was something that not related to a bid error or a quantity error or a design error. Most likely, though, since the other bidders or that pulled bid sets are saying that it was just a competitive issue, that they made a business decision not to submit a bid, not anything else related to the design, that we will likely just continue the review of the bids and likely recommend award to our transportation board next month. And that was parent low bidders, Las Vegas Paving, $61 million for parent on that one. Aggregate Industries was awarded the contract for $59 million on State Route 160 widening. That's up by Mountain Springs Summit. That's basically the continuation of Blue Diamond Road when it goes to State Route 160 on the way to Pahrump. So that's our last section of 4-laning that's needed to complete the widening to Pahrump. This was started years ago. This is one of the examples of a multi-phased approach to getting projects done. But we're pleased to see this final phase get awarded so that we can have that completely widened and have the safety benefits of that widening on State Route 160 by Mountain Springs Summit. On I-11, we're really looking forward to that August 9th date. Tina and members of the board are excited about opening the second phase of I-11 that RTC funded. Meanwhile, as we look at some of the other things to consider for I-11 continuing through the Las Vegas Valley, we'll finish up the traffic study that gives us the traffic numbers, the projections to look at where should I-11 be routed through in the Las Vegas area, the urban area. NDOT and Arizona DOT will join with RTC in visiting our delegation later this month, and the Chamber of Commerce typically goes as well to talk about I-11 and other needs in the valley. But we give an update as far as Nevada and Arizona DOT on what's happening on I-11 to our delegation members as part of the I-11 coalition, so we're looking forward to that. We're also doing a public meeting on August 9th. I'm sorry. It's probably I-11 day, August 9th. So we have the opening in the morning, but also in the afternoon there's the public meeting for what we call planning and environmental linkages. It just gives us a jump start on the environmental clearance process. So we're not quite at the environmental clearance stage for the rest of kind of north of Las Vegas all the way to I-80 in the north part of the state, but we want to eliminate some of the corridors that don't make sense, and really played more towards north of Tonopah, the middle part of the state, and what routes it could take around Hawthorne, Fallon, Fernley, Yerington, that area of the state. But we wanted to make that second round of meetings all the way in several venues across the state, and Las Vegas meeting will be held on August 9th. The Project Neon, as you know, the major switch took place so that we moved traffic over to those new paved lanes on I-15. There will be 5 more bridges to demolish in this next phase of Project Neon. Demolition will begin this weekend with the closure on I-15 northbound off-ramp to Martin Luther King Boulevard. And then the next US 95 weekend closure is July 20th and 22nd. So a lot of work still to do as we build the other half of the I-15 lanes, but we appreciate the commuters and the visitors' patience as they travel through that area and find alternate routes. So we'll be finished with this phase of reconstructing I-15 in mid-November, and it'll be a lot easier to travel through that corridor, which is the highest traveled corridor of a highway, at least in Nevada. And then we look forward to the final phase of Project Neon finishing by when they finish the HOV flyover bridge in the center of I-15 by middle of next year. The Tropicana interchange, we had heard from the MGM and the stadium developer concerns about the Hacienda Avenue HOV ramp. And the HOV ramp being at Hacienda and Harmon was an idea that was developed years ago during our HOV plan update. And that was before the stadium came along. We just assumed that since Hacienda was right by the stadium location, that it was a good location for the HOV off-ramp. But the MGM and stadium developers, part of the Tropicana interchange and looking at Hacienda and Harmon together in one environmental clearance document, they said it didn't make sense as they kind of developed their idea of access to stadium events and the fact that it's going to be primarily used as a pedestrian access. So they close off the travel lanes that are normally used by cars and to have pedestrians walk to the stadium from the strip by Mandalay Bay. And another consideration is that as the Las Vegas monorail is planning to extend to the Mandalay Bay location, it's going to be an access point, but not so much for vehicles So we had to rethink that, and we talked to the Federal Highway Administration. We're just going to update our HOV plan and look at what makes sense considering this input from the stakeholders in that area, and look at a location for an HOV ramp that may not be at Hacienda. It could be another cross street on I-15. And we're just looking at the implications of the traffic impacts to Tropicana interchange, and if we eliminate that Harmon, keep Harmon, maybe move Hacienda location to another location. But it just takes a little bit more time to look at that, and we're coordinate with the Federal Highway Administration that has to review the environmental document. I also wanted to give the board an update on the City Parkway slip ramp. So the Federal Highway Administration formally rejected the request to change the access from Interstate 515, which a lot of people call US 95 in that downtown area of Las Vegas. But it's an interstate, and they have special rules for access to or from an interstate. And the slip ramp concept to City Parkway, which is the road by the Mulaski building and leads to Symphony Park, the Federal Highway Administration had some technical reasons for not approving that change in access. So what we decided to do, working with the staff at the City of Las Vegas, to look at more of an HOV type connection in the center of that interstate and study that so that we still have access to City Parkway from the center of I-515, but it'd be an alternative that's probably more acceptable to the Federal Highway Administration as far as their rules and technical reasons for having access to the interstate. It's more acceptable to them to pursue that solution. It will give us the same improvement of additional access to that Symphony Park redevelopment area, as well as the improvements that are coming underway from Project Neon with additional ramps at Alta and some of the other locations. So that concludes the director's update from NDOT, and I'm willing to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you, Rudy. Mayor?
Thank you. Rudy, I have a few questions for you. First of all, the Route I-11 study, the traffic study, when do you anticipate that report's going to be out for review?
I expect it to be done by the late summer, kind of early fall of this year.
Do you anticipate any public comment on that final, or will that be a final?
I think that we, it should be, I don't think there was a public meeting planned for the traffic study. That's more just more of an internal engineering report that provides the volumes of traffic projections for the 20 years out or more. But eventually, when we do the development of some of these concepts for projects like an HOV plan update, that we're going to be adding that work to that traffic study consultant contract. That would require more of a public meeting for some of those concepts with revised HOV plan update.
Thank you. And then I wanted to know about the funding for the Boulder Highway, the complete streets, the larger project, not the smaller project.
So
where we're at on
I
that.
was talking with Tracy Larkin, my deputy director, and we think that we could look at, as the study that's underway jointly funded by NDOT and RTC gets wrapped up and we have a better idea of what we can build there, that the entities involved should look together. NDOT, Clark County, City of Las Vegas on the north end, by more closer to Fremont Street, and City of Henderson on the larger portion of Boulder Highway, Clark County. All these entities should get together along with RTC and talk about what can we do if we pull our resources, because NDOT really doesn't, is concentrating more on the system-to-system interchanges that I've mentioned in the past, the Henderson Spaghetti Bowl being one that Henderson's helping out with the initial $2 million to study that will lead into the environmental clearance of that improvement. But I think that if we all get together and decide what should this highway, Boulder Highway, be transformed to, and look at what we can pitch in to collaboratively to get it done, I think that would be a good approach, so that it wouldn't be just on NDOT's burden. Although it's a state highway, I think that the future of Boulder Highway as a complete street was more, I think, something that we all should kind of look at funding rather than just NDOT. It's something that we also would want to look at. Would an entity be willing to take over Boulder Highway, as like we're doing with Summerlin Parkway. We're taking Summerlin Parkway and swapping some of the local arterials to the city of Las Vegas. We're taking the Beltway from Clark County and swapping some of our local arterial streets that are state highways to Clark County to maintain. So I think that we would want to have that same conversation also on Boulder Highway.
Was that originally on the list of roads being considered for that kind of action, or?
I'd have to look at that legislative list. It was years ago that the legislature kind of identified a list of roads down here in Las Vegas that we should look at transferring, but I'm not certain if Boulder Highway was. But I think that it's a good opportunity to have that kind of discussion.
Okay, and then,
Especially if we're changing it to a complete street that's not a main entrance into town like it was when it was the old highway into Las Vegas.
well, I certainly think that that conversation should happen sooner than later. That's one of the roadways that we probably see more roadway deaths. And I remember years ago when the governor earmarked money to a road in Reno because there were so many roadway deaths where people were being hit crossing the road. Well, that's the case of Boulder Highway, and it really should be elevated to a road of high attention because of that.
Definitely, Mayor. And last month, the board did award a pedestrian safety project on Boulder Highway for several intersections.
And then also, it's my understanding that quite a bit of the NDOT funding was directed towards Reno for a project that they are going to be doing up in a major kind of their spaghetti bowl, if you will. And that concerns me because some of those resources were then taken away from Southern Nevada, maybe for roads like the Boulder Highway or for the 215, 515, and roads that really should be a priority in Southern Nevada, but have been directed to Northern Nevada. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
Certainly. So the project that the mayor is referring to is a project near the Spaghetti Bowl in Reno to widen southbound Interstate 580. And that's anticipated to be a design-build project that would be awarded, or a design-build team would be selected about a year from now. So it anticipates that we would sell bonds, about $150 million in bonding. We looked at our bonding capacity in the years 20, 21, and 22, and we think that there's about $300 million of our regular revenue that could be supported to support the bonds in those $100 million a year for those 3 years. So about half of that could go to that Reno project, and the other half would come to Vegas projects, in addition to what we can raise from the fuel revenue indexing revenue, which we anticipate would be about $60 million a year for those same 3 years. So roughly, you've got about $330 million left for Vegas and about $150 million for that anticipated design-build project in Reno. So I wouldn't call it diversion of funds in any means. It's more of if we have bonding capacity available, in addition to our regular revenue that we spend in Las Vegas, Reno, and throughout the state, it's just an idea of, can we use the bonding capacity that we do have for some of these needed projects, both in Las Vegas and in Reno?
Was there a list that was put together initially with fuel revenue indexing for the state's projects that was sort of approved and agreed upon by all of the entities that participated in passing fuel revenue indexing here in Southern Nevada, so that some of that list has changed and it took Boulder Highway off that list and made some adjustments to that list?
I don't recall Boulder Highway being on that list. So when NDOT was asked for the list, if you look back at the timing of the request, initially, there was not, in the first round of fuel revenue indexing, everybody wanted a list of projects in order to inform the public. This is what you can get for passing fuel revenue indexing for the second round. So first round, definitely it was more the legislature than the county commission enacted it. And we had to pass the public vote a couple of years ago. And the list was requested very quickly. It wasn't something that we ran by our transportation board by any means, but the RTC felt it'd be beneficial for people that are making these decisions to understand what could be done with the projects. Our chief engineer at the time provided the RTC with the list. Some of the local entities down here added some local projects to the list, and they were put under the NDOT list. So I would say that there's several lists. The list was never run by our transportation board. It was just something that was kept internal, and more felt that we could provide some information about what projects and what types of projects could be done with that fuel revenue indexing should it pass the public vote. So this was the middle of the year before the public vote in November, we had a kind of a wish list of projects, and some projects were added to that. So we do have an original list that was emailed to RTC. Project got added to that. So to say that there's an official list, I think, can be a bit misleading. There's several lists out there. There's official lists that we provided to the RTC, and they were concentrating more on the Tropicana interchange and the system-to-system interchanges that we've talked about. Centennial Bowl, I-15 at the 215 in the North Las Vegas area, 215 Beltway and 515 interchange in Henderson, and some of those other, the Hacienda Harmon Tropicana project would have been on that list as well. But we can provide, I think that's one thing that we were asked to research is, NDOT, what was your list? What changed on it? Because people feel that, I know that, Mayor, you feel that Boulder Highway it has to be a priority. We can have those discussions about what we can fund together.
I think the governor made it a precedent that roads that people die on should be a priority.
And they are a priority. As I mentioned, Mayor, the board approved a Boulder Highway Safety Project for pedestrian safety last month. Our transportation board is what I'm referring to. So it is a priority. Pedestrian safety is a priority. Highway traffic safety is a priority, and we are doing what we can. But we also see that removing some of the bottlenecks to the transportation network are important. And that's what we wanted to do with a lot of our funding, is to concentrate on the system-to-system interchange. The Phase 3C project that I mentioned that the board will likely award next month with our recommendation was one that we actually moved up one fiscal year to the current fiscal year to get it out earlier. So NDOT is trying to get some of these major projects out there. Boulder Highway is an important project, but you're talking about something that's very early in a planning study phase, not designed to the extent of one of these other interchanges that I mentioned that has environmental clearance and
I would
funding.
just add, in the interest of transparency for the public in the future, that when we create these lists, maybe they should be adopted by the board, and then that the public knows what the priorities are, so that you don't maybe add a road in Reno later, or add take out a road in Southern Nevada. That there's a, not to say there shouldn't be some flexibility, but certainly that there's something that when we have an understanding that it's agreed upon. And so maybe those things in the interest of the public's interest and transparency should be approved by the board.
Well, to my knowledge, we have not taken out a project in Southern Nevada for that Northern Nevada project. This was based on bonding, which was a concept developed last December when we presented it to our transportation board to use available bonding capacity to get some more projects out. So we didn't eliminate any Southern Nevada projects. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Let's continue with that, and then I have a couple from some earlier comments made. So Boulder Highway was on that list, and it was named for pedestrian safety, and I know we added 2 pedestrian crosswalks at Sun Valley and 1 other place, but we had 4 or 5 others that had been identified. Then I think we set up approved having RTC do the study for NDOT to determine not only where those needs were, but what we should do, because the traffic amount, the volume was down, but down the road it may be needed again. So there were a variety of discussions. So when the mayor and yourself are now having this discussion, since part of that's in my district, tell me where now you want a joint funded project, but it's not really on a list any longer? I'm trying to still understand that.
To look at the study findings, I think, are going to recommend that it be more of a complete street. Boulder Highway has a very large, wide right-of-way.
Correct.
So a lot of property that's really not being utilized to the extent. The nature of the road has changed over the years from being the original highway into Las Vegas. Now it's more, I think, available for other types of uses.
Yeah, we
as a
even
complete
talked about
street.
roundabouts at some point, and then that way you could narrow it to 2 lanes on both sides, and then down the road you could open it back up if the volume increased. So I know that there have been quite a bit of discussion.
So I think that when we look at what are the priorities, we do that with our partners here, the Clark County, cities, the RTC, to establish what are the priorities. And one of the things I've mentioned in previous meetings here is that it's nice to let our transportation board know through a resolution of support from a city, the county, from this RTC board of what's important so that they can have that same level of attention and prioritization to the projects. Now, when we looked at Boulder Highway, we want to know what is it going to cost, what are we actually building, what are we going to do, and how should we approach it? Is it going to be a phased approach? Like I mentioned, the State Route 160 project had to be phased over several years. How much money is available? So there's a lot of decisions made. I would say that Boulder Highway is something that we're still investing on the pedestrian safety issues on Boulder Highway. It's not stopping us from doing those improvements for safety, for pedestrian crossings. But to look at what are we going to build out of the study, it's just a natural progression of you go from the study now to engineering and then construction, and we go through the RTC to get that into the local plan. As far as the cost for the project, I really don't know until there's been a certain level of engineering done. When is the report going to be done, Tina, the Boulder Highway study?
We expect the report to be done within the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay. So I think as that report wraps up, then we'll have a better idea what the recommendation is and what the cost is, and then we should look together. What I'm saying is to get together with the entities, because depending on what years you want to see construction done, there's a certain amount of projects that we already have in our 4-year plan that's been approved and adopted by RTC, and it's always something that's subject to modification. We add projects, as I mentioned, the Centennial Bowl. This board approved a major update to move it from the next fiscal year 19 into the current fiscal year. That was done through the RTC process to get it in the plan. So plans can be modified all
True,
the
but
time.
the Centennial
so-
Bowl had been a promise that had been made before we moved it back to the 18, because it had been originally supposed to be for the 18. So what exactly are you doing now while we're studying? Are you adding any more pedestrian crossout safety pieces other than the 2 that have been approved
Yes,
so far?
there's about, I think that there were about 5 in the project that was awarded by the Transportation Board last month.
Okay, so that part is going while the study is going.
Yes.
But now the decision on who pays for whatever the results of the study are.
For the Boulder Highway study,
Correct.
I think that we need to have a conversation about how we can share costs.
Okay.
Or if it's all going to be on NDOT, since it is a state highway, if it's going to be viewed that way to make it into a complete street, then it has to be prioritized and presented to our board. But likely, we're not going to do a project all the way from Henderson to Fremont Street all at one time, unless we had the funding available.
But if you're going to go to bond for 300 million and 150 goes to whatever the spaghetti bowl up north, that leaves another 150 million.
Correct.
That then would be allocated to Southern Nevada?
Yes.
Is it statewide or just Southern Nevada?
Mainly Southern Nevada. It was meant for advancing construction of some of the projects that are undergoing the environmental clearance, like the Tropicana interchange.
And so for some reason, Boulder Highway has not been one of the roadways slated for an exchange?
I'm
Just
not
give
sure
us
if
the
it,
money,
what I was
let
saying
us
was,
spend it.
I'm not sure if it was on the legislature's list from several years ago, but it should be one of the roads that's considered for an exchange if it's going to be turned into a complete street.
So that could be where we free up money, or FRI is allocated from the state directly for the purposes of turning that roadway over, then give us the money and we do the improvements. I think that would be something to do earlier rather than later, and that would get it done faster. So maybe you could get that list of what our recommended, because I've been working on this with you all for like 8 years now, so I'm glad some of that's moving forward, but I thought Boulder Highway was going to be one of the ones that should be anticipated on that part of it. So if you could look at that, Rudy, because I don't know which legislative list you're talking about. Is it the one that was done when the stadium at midnight, then the $1 billion fiscal note that wasn't there that all of a sudden appeared and then things got changed, or where? So let's get a handle on that part of it. Then back to the city parkway access issue that the feds had some concerns with on design, you were saying,
Yes.
some technical things. Does that, at least the new design that's going to be accepted, does that anticipate any new future development? Because there's still quite a bit of empty property there. So I would hope that it's looking at volume, even if it's not there yet, so that you're not going back and tearing things up. And I don't know, that's up to the city, but I just would make sense to me on that part of it.
Yes, Commissioner, the traffic engineers do anticipate full build-out of development at that Symphony Park area. I know that some of the development uses can change, but they do their best estimate of traffic projections, assuming a full build-out.
Okay, that's good. And then the I-80, as you're going north from Tonopah, you were talking about, is there any opportunity to take a look at some additional interconnectivity of the old rail lines that are still just sitting in some places where mining used to have them and they just kind of abandoned them, so that you are doing some parallel opportunities for both rail as well as roadway?
We typically will look at only the rail bridges over a highway or rail intersections and making safety improvements at intersections, but we do not build rail. We can study things like that with plans, but we can't use fuel tax revenue to build a rail system.
Yeah, that I understand, but I would think that we should start brushing that off. There's the gentleman that runs the Ely train depot has a map actually of old interconnectivities that might be something that could be drop-off points, and then people could hop on and hop off, and there would just maybe a different way. And then as our wildlife is pursuing, I know other states have done, Arizona, Utah, where in certain places where they know the deer or are traveling, that they do the undercover so that they're not blended into the middle. Are we anticipating?
Yes, that's definitely an environmental consideration to look at wildlife crossings. And speaking to the issue of rail and some of the missing connections, that was identified, I think, in either the freight plan or the rail plan for Nevada that was done. Again, it just identifies missing linkages, but it doesn't identify the funding for those connections.
I think Rural Nevada Economic Development has that study, and I think it was Senator Neal that worked on that, but it may have been another one updated since they looked at it as an interim committee. I haven't reviewed that part. And then as you look at the at-grade issue for the stadium for pedestrian, I thought that was accurate. It wasn't at-grade. I thought it was above.
Yes.
Okay, so it's above the highway.
Yes.
Okay, and then who's looking at, or will the study look at employee access, back of the house, all those other things, not just the people coming to enjoy the programming?
Right.
So how?
That would be the HOV plan update that I was speaking about.
Okay.
And one of the things that the MGM identified was it really, since it goes over Frank Sinatra Drive, the current road, it wasn't a good back of the house type of access point for employment.
So that will be something that you'll be studying, because as much as I like the idea of HOVs, there could be drop downs that you could do that could divert the employees in. There are just different ways to design it that maybe don't need an HOV at that component. You're really looking at the volume of people trying to get back and
Exactly,
forth.
Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilwoman,
just for a matter of transparency for the public, and so they know, and we all realize, the monies that we get from the fuel tax, these monies are they spent about 50-50 north and south, or is it because most of it, I would assume, comes from the south, right? The fuel tax.
Yes.
Does a larger percentage go to the south because more fuel tax money comes from there and the roads are in more necessity? Or do you do what we've done for years, 50-50 north and south?
Typically, we know that 2/3 of the population is down here, but about half of the money, the transportation revenue, gets spent down here. About 18 to 20% is in Washoe County. There's been a lot of investments in other counties up there, but I know it's viewed as more northern Nevada. But we have a state highway system that one of the points that I always make is Interstate 80 was a big freight corridor. It's got about 400 miles compared to the 120 or so miles of I-15. So we spent a lot of money on reconstruction of I-80, and that's something that is important for freight movement, and it's an important corridor for the nation. But I know that there's a concern about equity, and it's ongoing. We, found a way to do Project Neon, a billion-dollar project with all the right-of-way and engineering and everything included, along with construction. But we're still going to be paying for that project for many years, but we're trying to find ways to still use the fuel revenue indexing funding, additional bonding capacity to do much-needed projects down here in Las Vegas. But traditionally, it's been about half of the transportation funding spent in the Clark County area, and primarily the urban area.
So it's about half, and we give 2/3. Because half of the money is spent here. Well, I'm asking these questions because, as you said, this is coming to the fore right now in many different places. And I would think that that would have to have big consideration that 2/3 of the tax money, fuel tax, comes from down here. So you would think that it would be needed down here too at a greater extent. Just making a point here, that's all. Just making a point because I feel very strongly and things that have been happening unrelated to transportation, that we here in the South need to have it understood that the tax monies that have come from here have to be spent here in close approximation to what comes from here because our needs are greater, and that's why we give more money. Just making a comment. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
I love comments. I have one coming up.
Thank you. I do believe that the development of the technology park, that there's been ongoing conversations that you may not need to widen I-80 or look at that because they're looking at a rail line that directly goes into the park that they would have to offset or pay for. It's already there, but they can divert it right in for distribution, so more logistic port-wise. So I'm hoping that we're in coordination with them because I know the Commissioner Lucy had been talking with the technology park developers on that. That may ease some of that burden on I-80 because you're right, it's a truck traffic haven. Plus now with all the people going back and forth to work because they don't want to live out in the valley, and so they're commuting back and forth. So I do know though that they were looking at that rail, so hopefully you'll take a look at that component. And then it's been the 90s is when we did the original fair share, and you can never get to penny for penny, nor should it be because there's needs statewide, right? But it may be time legislatively to take a look at just where our disparities coming in, not just in fuel, but just in other distributions. And we spent a year and a half working on that back in '91 before we enacted it. And we did a hold harmless clause, so as we readjusted. So hopefully if they look at something within the property tax cap to readjust that fluctuation, maybe they could start to have that conversation, both on transit as well as within just tax collections. Thank you.
Rudy, I'm a visual person, so I've been drawing pictures over here. If we were to take RTC Southern Nevada and our projects, normal FRI funded, separate from the funding, RTC Washoe and their project list, NDOT, your normal project list, your 5-year plan, and then would there be an NDOT FRI project list?
We would apply the FRI funding to a lot of those system-to-system interchange projects that I mentioned, but we're looking at a significant amount of money from that bonding. It would be put into our biennial budget request. We would have a list of projects that we would go through the RTC to add in.
Yeah, but separate from the money, to me, when you said earlier, I think you mentioned that your list was held internally and it never went before the Transportation Board. That's bothersome simply because from my perspective, I'd like to look at, Dr. Fred provides us with a chart of projects. We know all the member agencies, where they fall in, the funding, and then your normal, separate from FRI, your normal NDOT project list, that's public, I think we see that. But shouldn't there be an NDOT FRI project list that would be separate from the normal NDOT funding, but specifically dedicated to FRI funds raised in Southern Nevada that NDOT will use in Southern Nevada? Separate from the funding now, just the project list. Is that something that is somewhere, whether in staff or in someone's mind?
It was always anticipated there'd be a final list, or basically an allocation of those FRI funds to specific projects. I think what's occurred is that as we looked at last December, I mentioned a presentation to our Transportation Board that we have this bonding from FRI that's capacity that's available, a bonding from our regular fuel tax revenues that's available, And we identified some projects to our transportation board that I've mentioned. I've already gone through those interchanges and Tropicana interchange, system-to-system interchanges with the Beltway. But the final allocation, we just felt that it would go through the STIP process and through the local regional plan here at RTC, that the identification of the funding has to be, since it's a fiscally constrained document, the funding sources have to be identified. Obviously, there'd be a list of projects, but that transforms into the formal actions taken by this board to adopt projects into your plan. So I think that it's kind of we should have a list. It's just that the list initially was a $1.2 billion list. And I think we want to look at what's the real projects that we're going to do in the next 4 years. And that list, I would say that it's something that we need to put together, be more transparent about, present it to this board and the our transportation board as well. So point taken, Commissioner, Chairman.
And that's what we need to do over the next month or two, work on the lists. Because the money's there. How we bond or use it directly, the money's there. Over the next at least 15 years. There's going to be a lot of money. So money's not the issue anymore. It's identifying the project. So my perspective would be understanding the project lists, knowing that the money's going to be there however we choose to bond or go direct. But the list has to be there before we start allocating money, and not let's allocate money and figure out where it's going to go to. There seems to be a disconnect there. So I would just ask, and I think it's in part some of the comments you heard earlier, that we firm up. And it doesn't have to be in concrete and locked in forever, but everybody from your transportation board down to this board, down to our member agencies, should be able to have a spreadsheet that identifies all the transportation projects in Southern Nevada, including NDOT General and NDOT FRI, and then we can all agree, especially since we'll probably end up joint funding some of these activities just because of the money availability. But I think that needs to be taken from your internal group, brought before your transportation board, and let's have that public dialogue, because that list really needs to be agreed upon going into next year's legislative session. So we as a RTC board, and Washoe, they should likewise. They certainly know what we're doing. We should know what they're doing to make sure that we can defend that what Washoe RTC's doing with their FRI money and what NDOT's partnering with them up there is not commingling or taking away or moving some of our money. And the only way we can do that is see the projects and the funding. We good?
I agree.
Okay.
I think that we are getting to the point now as we've seen the first year of collection of that FRI revenue, that we now know that we'll be receiving. So we can definitely put that together. And one of the things we were waiting for was seeing how much we bring in, seeing what we could bond, putting that into our biennial budget request. But it should be something that now can be much more transparent and put together so that both the RTC of Southern Nevada and the Transportation Board are aware of. This is the list of projects that we're putting this money towards.
And I'm taking that as your commitment.
Yes.
Dr. Fred, you're in charge. You make sure that commitment gets on a piece of paper somewhere.
You got
and
it.
Rudy, and we've talked about this before, it'll also help this board and this staff to be able to advocate on your behalf before the State Transportation Board.
Sure.
And I think we in Southern Nevada have to take a far more active role in supporting NDOT in Southern Nevada to the board, because some of the board members are probably not as aware of the things that you are doing and that need to be done down here. So I think that's incumbent upon us to do some things. Fred, Dr. Fred.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, at the last board meeting, you gave us direction to bring back an agenda item in September on this very topic. So we'll have a formal agenda item in September, which would discuss exactly what you discussed. First of all, we'll have the list, even though it's an internal list to end that, as we knew it before the vote, the ballot in 2016, and then the changes that have been made to date, and then the reasons behind the changes. I would also suggest that maybe around the same time we come in and do an update on Boulder Highway, even though it's not completed yet, but at least it will give the board an idea as to the cost and the type of project that it's ultimately going to be, so that when we talk about projects and funding, you all be informed as to how much Boulder Highway is going to cost, the phasing, and the type of facility, along with the list of projects that NDOT has suggested and the changes made, and then the board can deliberate, discuss and make necessary adjustments to the list, and obviously NDOT's board as well.
Wonderful. And is Rudy's team being involved in the
Yes.
preparation of this?
Yeah, we had a meeting with them, with Tracy and Chandra Rosenberg, I believe, 3 weeks ago after the last EAC meeting with all the public works directors, and we had a long meeting on this subject. So we plan to have that again this month, and in August and then September, bring something formally to the board.
Excellent.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might question,
Mayor Goodman, please.
through you, Tina, what's the formula on the Fry 2 money, percentage-wise?
For Fry 2 money, all 100% of Fry 2 money for the state has to be spent in Clark County, 100%.
Could you repeat that, please?
100% of Fry 2 money for the state has to be spent in Clark County,
Okay.
all of that.
So I'm a big believer you have to inspect what you expect. And so that is what you will be doing?
Yes, we'll bring the list saying that based on the projected revenues, this is the list that we expect to have. Now, the revenues do change. The original assumption was the RTC was going to get about $1.8 billion, and NDOT would get about $1.2 billion over the period. The numbers have changed because of the cost of living and CPI, et cetera, et cetera. And it does happen all the time. So what we would expect from NDOT is the original list that was supposed to fund the 1.2 and any revisions downwards. For example, if now based on the projections, instead of 1.2, NDOT's list is supposed to be maybe $1 billion. We would have that list and the revisions. And the reasons behind that, we do that all the time. So we'd expect something from NDOT, and that's what we'll present to the board.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And let me just add, and Rudy, we may need your support on this. If we anticipate this at the September board meeting, what are our dates? Does someone have a calendar? So would be the 13th. Rudy, your board is on the 10th of September? Well, that Monday, okay.
Yes, correct.
So, and I'm just thinking, whatever is presented here at the RTC, that if September 10th to their board is too early, maybe we follow up in October at the State Transportation Board.
Okay.
Just as and I don't know the protocols, Rudy, but just as an informational item or an update to the board. And maybe, I know that Tina, you attend those, and maybe our presence before that board should be more consistent and more engaged.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask you a question on that, knowing that we're into a new governor, and there will be changes because of that, and I believe it's the governor who makes the appointment to NDOT. I'm wondering on your timeline there, if that should be considered as, you know. Thanks.
Very good.
Okay.
Rudy, thank you.
So just to clarify, so Rudy will present to his board first, and then we'll come back to this board.
Well, no, we want to move forward with ours.
Okay.
And especially since NDOT has been engaged in this September agenda item.
Okay.
Maybe it's best to have it presented here, but bring it before.
And one more thing, I'm so sorry, but I agree with everybody on the panel and everybody, I'm sure, in this room and everybody in Southern Nevada. Safety first, safety always. And so the issues that the mayor brought up and everyone else about getting the monies onto Boulder Highway now, not waiting, whatever can be done to expedite those 5 crossovers or whatever, that we get a timeline back by the next meeting when those are going to be started, where they're going to go, and how effective they're going to be, because I think that's critical. Every time we push it out a month or 6 months, we're going to lose more people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rudy, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your next Next on your agenda is your consent agenda, which is made up of items 5 through 61 and may be taken in one motion.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 62 is to receive a report on Southern Nevada Strong and the progress of implementation by the Southern Nevada Health District. And to introduce the item, we have Director Craig Rayborn to kick us off.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you. And for the record, my name is, again, Craig Rayborn. I'm the director of your Metropolitan Planning Organization. So as a reminder, at its core, SNS is a partnership that was formed to develop and implement a regional plan for Southern Nevada. Most of the goals and objectives identified in that regional plan will be implemented by the partners who formed SNS, the local governments, nonprofit organizations, and regional agencies. So today, and then the RTC serves as the core administrator that supports the implementation of the plan, highlights successes, tracks what's going on. And then so today, what we're going to do is we're going to provide a quick update on what the RTC has been doing in its role in supporting SNS implementation. We're going to highlight one activity that we do in our role as one of sort of those partner agencies, as the transportation agency, to support and help implement SNS. And then we're going to hear from the Southern Nevada Health District on some of its current activities to implement the regional plan. So to hear about what we've been doing as in that core administrator role is Ray Lathrop, who's our manager of regional planning.
Hi, good morning. Ray Lathrop, manager of regional planning. We've been very busy over the last couple of months since the last time we provided an update to the board. And we have a few additional items that's happened since then we wanted to share with you. So our team, like Craig said, has been very busy working with organizations across all sectors and across the entire community to help support implementation of the regional plan. Our very first project we want to highlight here is a resource we've created for all of our partners and public agencies to support and improve community engagement efforts, building off of the award-winning public engagement activities spearheaded by the City of Henderson during the planning phase. Our goal for this project is to really promote inclusive and comprehensive outreach tools to all of our agencies and partners. We've compared best practices and include representatives from all agencies to develop a toolkit to encourage community engagement across the entire community. The data map, which is what we're particularly proud of, supports all publicly available census information and displays it on a block group level. This data is displayed around housing, transportation metrics, language, income, and other socioeconomic data that we think is vital and important to reaching communities that are important to be heard from. This is just a first phase of this map. We could include additional data layers as our partners provide us additional feedback. And also part of the community engagement toolkit that we're creating is a step-by-step worksheet to plan engagement activities and an audience identification survey so that the Southern Nevada Strong team here at the RTC can provide organizations and contacts that would be vital to be heard from when planning an outreach effort. We're creating a new webpage on the Southern Nevada Strong website that will house all of this information, as well as other important dashboards and data tools that our community creates independently. And we're going to meet with all of our partners to make sure that this tool is useful and implements important outreach efforts. Second, back in April, we held a transit-oriented development symposium. You saw a recap video here in May, and something that the Southern Nevada Strong team wanted you to know is that we leveraged the very important speakers and experts that came to that event, and we continued to bring them to some of our important community leaders. So we brought Secretary Anthony Fox to a luncheon with our partners at the Urban Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, and the Latin Chamber of Commerce, really to discuss workforce and diversity issues in a small and intimate setting, and that was really important for us to do to our partners. We also brought one of the panelists from the symposium, Chris Nevitt from the City of Denver, to our steering committee meeting. Again, leveraging kind of some of our events into the small efforts that Southern Nevada Strong has. He shared, as the TOD manager in Denver, he shared his perspective on how to create and support transit-oriented development in Denver and how coalition building is really integral to that work. Another project that we've been leading with our partners since last year, has been moving forward a strategic framework for improving our grant competitiveness and capacity. We as a team committed to 4 workshops to focus on professional development for grant writers and staff from nonprofits and local governments. We've held 3 of those workshops thus far, focused on prioritizing this work, investing in grant capacity, and improving grant applications. We've had 130 people attend these workshops, 50 of which have come more than once. We've also recruited 10 experts from local government, the state, the business community, and nonprofit community to share their expertise with our audience. Our next workshop is scheduled for July 23rd, and will focus on evaluation plans and creating important metrics. We've had really great feedback on these workshops thus far, and I think that they very much contribute to our reputation as providing quality programming. And the last update, I'll give back to Craig.
Thank you. Again, Craig Rayborn, Director of your MPO. So I'm going to talk quickly about a Walkability Action Institute that the RTC participated in, actually partnering with the partner you're going to hear from in a moment, the Southern Nevada Health District. So this was about a 4-day training in Atlanta, Georgia. It was funded by the Centers for Disease Control and hosted by the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors. We applied for a grant about 6 months ago. We're selected. We were one of 9 regions that were selected to participate in this training. We put together a team that included a combination of elected officials, representatives from the Transportation Agency, from Public Works Departments, from the local health agency, and then any other public agencies. And so our team consisted of Commissioner Kirkpatrick from the Clark County Commission, the Public Works Directors from the City of Henderson and the City of Las Vegas, the Director of Community Health from the Health District, a representative from the American Heart Association, and myself as the MPO representative and as the team lead. So we completed this training. It was 4 days of hands-on training, field exercises as well as classroom exercises. The objective of that was to develop an action plan that we can implement as a region. We've developed that draft action plan. We're working as a team to figure out the process we want to follow to sort of socialize that and get buy-in and start moving that forward. But it consists of sort of brief implementable steps that fall into the kind of activities that each one of our members can play some kind of a role in supporting. And then, so the next step will be implementing that. And as the MPO, we will start working those actions into our plans and the types of projects that we support and study and future plans that we develop. So with that, I'm going to introduce Nicole Bungham from the Southern Nevada Health District, who will give an update on their activities relating to SNS.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everybody. Nicole Bungham from the Southern Nevada Health District. I'm a supervisor there in the Division of Community Health, and I'm pleased to be here today. We've been a part of Southern Nevada Strong since the very beginning. We value the partnerships that we've been able to build within that group, and we continue to actively participate. Today, I'd like to share with you just a few of the projects that we've been able to work on with our partners at Southern Nevada Strong. The mission of the Southern Nevada Health District is to promote the health and well-being of our residents and visitors. The efforts of Southern Nevada Strong help support our goal of creating a healthy community. As you all are probably very well aware, our health is largely impacted by where we live, where we work, where we learn, where we play, and where we worship. Access to healthy foods, opportunities for physical activity, clean air, and high-quality preventive services are vital to healthy and vibrant communities. Within the Health District, the Office of Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion is a primary connection point for Southern Nevada Strong. We work with many agencies, organizations, and coalitions to foster policies, systems, and environmental changes that make it easier to engage in healthy eating and healthy physical activity and have a healthy lifestyle. We have a history of leveraging CDC funding and other funding to support evidence-based initiatives and healthy lifestyles. We have aligned many of our goals and objectives with those of the Southern Nevada Strong Regional Plan, and much of this alignment and overlap comes in Goal 3 of the Invest in Complete Communities theme of the regional plan, support access to healthcare, healthy food, and community resources. We've developed many innovative and evidence-based programs to support healthy lifestyles and the elimination of health disparities. Here are just a few examples of some of the free health programs that we've developed. These programs focus on nutrition, physical activity, diabetes prevention, and reducing tobacco use. One of our main goals aligns directly with the Southern Nevada Strong's objective to implement educational media campaigns. We develop social marketing campaigns in English, Spanish, and other languages that promote healthy behaviors and link residents to existing programs and services. These are just a few examples of some of our more recent campaigns. We're also working to further objectives within Goal 2 of the Increased Transportation Choice theme and Goal 3 of the Invest in Complete Communities theme. To ensure access to opportunities for physical activity, we have focused many of our initiatives on parks and trails. We've worked with partners to install wayfinding and distance markers on over 50 miles of urban trails throughout the valley. We also developed the Neon to Nature mobile app and online program to promote and increase trail usage. This app allows you to search for trails by location and amenity. It's been downloaded almost 10,000 times, and hopefully some of you have had a chance to use it as well. Recently, we worked with Get Outdoors Nevada and the Regional Open Space and Trails Work Group to develop a voluntary regional signage and wayfinding policy for the Neon to Nature trail system. This guide will help create consistent signage and wayfinding on trails while allowing for local customization. It directly corresponds with SNS strategies 3.3.9 and 3.3.7 to develop and adopt uniform design and maintenance standards for trails and support trail maintenance. We also support food systems that provide healthy and affordable options to our community. We've worked to establish nutrition standards and increase access to healthy foods and beverages in vending machines in government buildings. We have supported efforts to increase access of healthy and affordable foods and farmers markets, especially for our low-income community. And we continue to work with hospitals, work sites, and educational settings to create healthy food environments. Additionally, with funding from some of our CDC grants, we've been able to support Complete Streets initiatives, expand bike lanes, support the Safe Routes to School program, and promote bicycling and walking. We supported a Complete Streets policy adoption in the city of North Las Vegas, and we funded the development of design guidelines specific to Southern Nevada to support the implementation of the RTC's Complete Streets policy. We provided financial support to update the regional bike and pedestrian plan for Southern Nevada with a specific focus on equity, and we provided funding to fill in or connect gaps in over 30 miles of bike lanes in and around parks and schools throughout the valley. We supported expansion of the Safe Routes to School program and multiple Safe Routes to Schools initiatives, including the Fire Up Your Feet, Walk and Roll, Nevada Moves Day, toolkits for school coordinators, and school walk audits. We've also provided sponsorship and helped to promote the RTC Bike Share program. Finally, we've also partnered with RTC and other SNS partners on these related activities, including, as Craig mentioned, the Walkability Action Institute, Livable Centers Study, Pedestrian Comfort Study, Heat Safety campaigns, and future grants and funding opportunities. These cross-sectional partnerships, like Southern Nevada Strong, are crucial to our work. No one organization has all the resources or all the expertise to do it all, and through these partnerships, we're able to define the problems, create a vision, and build relationships that lead to change. We're committed to continuing working collaboratively with our partners in Southern Nevada Strong to address issues like health equity and economic development and to ensure a healthy community for our residents. Thank you so much.
Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you, good work. Do we provide, or we, the health district, provide the advertising directly to schools so they can incorporate them into their parent newsletters?
Meaning, do we work directly with schools to share some of the resources?
I'm thinking parent newsletters, they're always looking for information to
Yeah.
put in there, so maybe there could be a standardized person that you can contact and they make sure the school sites.
That's a great idea. I know that we do that individually with some schools, but
Right,
we'll
yeah,
definitely
I
follow
think
up
you get,
because it would be
but
great
maybe there
to-
could be a school district-wide
Right, have a
contact
bigger
person, so
reach.
that might be something to take a look at.
We'll do that.
Especially with the new superintendent coming in. And then there was some states that were experimenting with hospitals, and you mentioned that you work in partnership with them on a variety of different things.
Mm-hmm.
They would actually, upon release, write a food prescription
Mm-hmm.
for individuals being released. You know, so you were in for low blood, here's eat lots of spinach and here's some recipes kind of thing. Do we coordinate anything along those lines?
We don't have anything like that. We have worked to provide nutrition incentives for SNAP users, as you're well aware, at farmers markets. That next step with hospitals, we've worked with them to promote some of the resources, but as far as providing like a fruit and veggie RX program, we have not done that yet.
Okay, maybe we can kick that around at one of the health board meetings
Yeah.
and see if we can play with that a little bit.
Be
It
a
might be
great
kind of
idea.
fun. And then your pedestrian comfort study, tell me what that entails. Comfort meaning how far in between bus stops they have to walk, or what?
I'll turn that over to Craig.
Commissioner, yeah, again, Craig Rayborn from the MPO. Yeah, so that study will look at what are the types of conditions that we can improve that would make it more comfortable for pedestrians to walk. So yes, it looks at like understanding what are the factors that influence pedestrian activity, and then specifically in specific situations like accessing bus stops or facilities along streets or street crossings and so on.
Maybe you could also work with us in RPC, because all the regions are established, on our planning guidelines, because we force people into walls and they can't get out of their subdivisions. They have to get into the car to get to the grocery store, to get to something. There may be different alternatives that our very talented planning staff that all of us have could come up with, so we don't force people into HOAs, but we also have a different experience of how you get in. There's berming, there's different things that could be done. So I would hope maybe if you're going to look at that, we can include planning staff to look
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
design
we have
standards.
please. Yeah, absolutely. We have planning and public works staff from all of the local agencies as part of the technical advisory committee for the pedestrian comfort study. And then we'll actually be working with those jurisdictions on some test implementations in a number of different locations to be determined as the project advances.
Yeah, because I know that RTC's done much better, and Carl, thank you for locating more bus stops where they need to be, but our inner cities don't have even the shading still, so I would hope that maybe this could drive where that needs to be, and then recognizing that we have food deserts, and so that when a grocery store closes, that person used to shop there, now they got to walk an extra mile to get to something, and their ice cream is melted and their milk is spoiled, whatever happens. But just trying to anticipate, I know what we're trying to get to, but at a minimum, if they're going to hop the bus, I would hope we would have shade as much as we possibly can, and maybe that can help identify other underserved areas. There's even Route 109 in Lois's district, they still don't have a shade over by Metropolitan Police Department. So, and that's a well-used piece. So those are just some things that maybe, hopefully, the comfort study would identify.
Yes, absolutely. Those are things that we will be looking at.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, with the health district, lead-based paint. We used to have a person that managed that, and then they went away, and now we've had 3 directors since then. What's the status of identifying and removing lead-based paint within?
We are working with UNLV. They recently received a lead grant, and so we are providing education through the health district. We're actually reaching out to families whose children have had elevated blood lead levels. I believe that there's a program within the city of Las Vegas that will actually help go out and remediate in those homes where there is lead-based paint. But within the health district, if we get a case reported where a child has a lead level over 10, that will trigger action within where our environmental health will go out, our clinical services will go out, and they'll do an analysis of the home to try to identify the exposure.
But there's no funding other than maybe what they have as a project piece. So who identifies that person with 10%? They have to go into a doctor and be...
Yeah, those are lab reports.
So those that don't have access are undocumented, that don't have access, especially now, fear factor that's out there. We used to be proactive. We actually used to go out, the health district used to go do inspections, and they got rid of that programming part of it. So it's incumbent just if you happen to have a doctor that tests for that. And let's talk about that too. That's always bothered me because that's very preventable. And as a special ed teacher, the cause that can happen with the intelligence of the child is really very damaging.
Right.
And then maybe we could identify some grant money for remediation county-wide so that we're able to help any of the sister cities as well as, because it does no good to identify it.
Correct, yeah, I believe it's only
Unless
in
we need
specific
an
zip
ordinance that
codes.
says that the homeowner, the apartment owner, or whatever is required to have to pay for it within a certain period of time. I'm happy to entertain that idea too, but we need to think about identifying and then remediation.
Yeah, we have picked up our educational outreach part of it, so hopefully there's a little more awareness of that, and that will continue. Actually, we'll be transitioning back to UNLV, that portion of it, but the surveillance and the response will stay within the health district.
It tended to be, what was the year cutoff for lead ID? In the 60s?
78, I believe.
78, okay, yeah. Homes built prior to that are probably likely to have it. And so I think that we probably should have some discussion further on how to better.
And as you're probably well aware, we have other unique exposures here in Southern Nevada, so it's a concern.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, I'd like to compliment both the Health District and Southern Nevada Strong on the collaboration that's occurred. And, you know, clearly this is an example of where you have a set of goals that are community-wide goals that are being implemented and targeted by the agencies that can deliver on those goals. So here you're creating successes across the community that impact all of our residents because there's that coordination and collaboration. Essentially, I think we're moving the needle to get better outcomes in Southern Nevada, and I just want to compliment you for the presentation today and for the results you're getting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, your next item is item number 63, and we can skip that this month. That is to receive information from legal counsel. We do not have a need to discuss any legal issues. Your final item is item number 64, which is to conduct your final citizens participation period.
Thank you, Tina. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board. Robin Kincaid.
Should just be on? Okay, great. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Robin Kincaid, and I've shared with the board in the past how paratransit service areas restrictions have affected my daughter Kayla Kincaid's access to her church, friends, and potential employment opportunities. Once again, I stand before you to pose questions that I'm requesting answers from the Commission. Since 2010, Las Vegas urban area has seen double-digit increase in population for persons over 65 and adults with disabilities. We've seen significant growth in the housing by adding new senior developments, new assisted living units, along with new residential communities. None of these areas are going to see a fixed route in their area, which will result in paratransit services because there isn't a formula or a plan to serve our new communities. The RTC website indicates that there is a process to evaluate the service annually for expansions. But when was the last time that this evaluation for expansion was conducted, and when will the public see this evaluation? There are some Las Vegas constituents who have been waiting for over 20 years for transportation services. I'm asking that you either expand the fixed route area or restore the service area to the pre-2011 size so that transportation dollars are spent in an equitable manner to meet the needs of all of your constituents. Persons with disabilities like my daughter Kayla are looking for equity in how dollars are spent on transportation. You know, why we can spend unlimited resources in providing free transportation to tourists or guests in the city, and even on light rail, but we cannot provide services to seniors over 55 or individuals with disabilities. The individuals that live in senior communities will never be able to demonstrate that need for a fixed route due to their age, their mobility, heat sensitivity, and in some instances, the onset of even dementia. This means that there are too many residents and voters that can not only leave their home, but persons who ride paratransit cannot visit elderly relatives, such as grandparents who reside out of the service area. It's important to recognize that the lack of service does not only affect the citizens that live in such an urban area, but their extended families and friends. Seniors and individuals with disabilities should not feel stranded and without viable options. In my May public comment, I referenced the April 2018 Federal Transit Authority Administration for the ADA Paratransit Compliance Review audit and the multiple findings that were noted in the FTA. I recently, just prior to the meeting, saw that there is some response that the RTC worked on, but I request that there actually be a corrective action plan that the board approves. So I'd ask for it to be on the, I believe, the June agenda. It did not occur. It's not on the July agenda as well. And I am looking for, I've looked at the response just briefly, but I also would like to see a real corrective action plan that the board is fully aware of and that is transparent to the community. And I'd like to also know whether or not the Federal Transit Administration has actually received and accepted any of these responses. So I look forward to the Commission finding ways to expand the paratransit service area and to also address these concerns and these findings in the FTA audit. But, you know, we have to meet this growing population that includes, of course, our most vulnerable citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
So, if you would slide to your right just a little bit, and you're right there at the mic. Perfect. Thank you.
I was a little off today. I just want to just express that I still would like to see the service area either extended or the RTC regular fixed route extended so that persons with disabilities can get to and from the places they want to get to with as less of a hassle as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Versnick, and I'm speaking before you for the 8th time. Each time I've testified, my message has been the same: restore the service area to the way it was in 2011. It's been over 5 years since we purchased our forever home. I'm not planning on moving. I don't know how long it's going to take to have my home in the service area so my son can be independent and get to work and socialize and do activities. Does anyone have an answer for me? It seems to me that our tourists and their transportation needs is a priority of this commission. When is RTC going to meet the needs of the disability community? This commission encourages the public to come forward and get involved and have their concerns on the record by testifying. I've often wondered if it makes a difference. I don't know if anyone is listening because 8 months later, I'm still standing in front of you asking you to expand the service area to the way it was in 2011. Thank you.
Thank you. Rita Varney?
My name is Rita Varney. I have testified before on behalf of the need for an extended service area for paratransit. I have sat and listened to months of testimonies from families of disabled children or adults still living at home and their pleas, along with mine, for you to just listen, pay attention to the needs of a special population. I've also listened to the testimony to the amount of money that is being spent on Uber Lyft program that you say only services a small portion of clients, and these clients must live in the service area. So the purpose of this Uber Lyft program that is costing a lot of money is just additional vehicles to the service area, not solving the problem of servicing those clients outside the restrictive service area. Do you know how many Uber Lyft drivers I have spoken to that live outside the service area? That live in those areas? Has anyone asked? Do you know how many would welcome the opportunity of a regular gig to take somebody to work and pick them up every day? When I heard the statistics you quoted of the actual number of registered clients living outside and needing services, then you obviously know names and who these people are. You have the ability to immediately include and grandfather in anyone you want at any time. Those buses are driving in the vicinity already, or could be instead of driving in the back lots and taking naps. You have the ability right now to revise the booking system to better use the vehicles and times of the drivers to serve more. I make mention again of the empty buses on the roads and the nap times. As a taxpayer, I remind you I'm paying the same taxes for those services, and so is each and every one of those homes and units that are sold in those outside communities. I know you are currently also conducting the peer review, which I'm upset that we have to wait until October. But we'll hear then of somebody else that's going to tell you how many homes, additional homes, that have been indirectly already approved by you by way of developments, roads, and waterways. I counted 30 master plan communities, either long built or pending permit, and 16 are outside the service area. That's more than 50%. Don't forget about developments in between those larger communities areas. And how many of those people in those areas have tried the website and never went any further because it said no? I hope you address this in your restructuring. There should be options on the website. Everyone should be entitled to paratransit if there is a need. I just read that AARP said 90% of aging adults choose to live in the same area, in the same community of their home. We also have the benefit of being a retirement area. Successful community living requires access to medical, shopping, and other essential services. People will continue to have medical needs, and a family member is not always available. And then there's the social isolation, having negative effects on both a personal physical and mental health. It's all related. Extending the current service area will make a significant difference in lives of individuals and their families. Knowing how much Las Vegas has grown and continues to grow demands it sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Barnes?
Good afternoon, Dorothy Barnes. I have an issue. I've come before you all in the past. I've even invited people to give me a signature on a promissory note because I came to Las Vegas in 1999 as a tourist and decided to become a newcomer. Upon becoming a newcomer, one of the first things I did was use public transportation, and public transportation here has come a long way. I commend you all for the great job you have done buying the new bus equipment and making the stops, you know, where it's, you know, visible at night. You can find the stops, and so many things you all have done to help during the summer months to keep the buses cool and not get overheated. So the air conditioning has been great so far this summer. But I'm here to complain on something else. I am a disabled lady veteran. I ride with a disabled ID. I slipped at a bus stop in Lake Mead and Las Vegas Boulevard some years ago and injured my knee. At that time, I had an injection of cortisone, and I've gotten stuck on anti-inflammatory twice a day to be able to walk on this knee without crutches. The first 5 months, I walked on crutches. It wasn't easy to get on and off the bus on crutches. And what I'm trying to say this, you know, I have people that get on the bus that are ordered to lie, even disabled people. They will lie on me to keep my name on this program. Okay, my case went before England way before I came to Las Vegas, but I've been to Shreveport discussing it with the law enforcement people, putting a lie up here to block me into this box. I don't have a British accent, but I was selected, something I won't get off into it because this is a different meeting, but my name shouldn't be on this program because I could pack my bags and go to London, England, and live over there and not even look back at the United States. I grew up here. I want to see this country flourish. I want to see this area flourish in Las Vegas, Nevada. I wanted to be an asset to the city, you know, but it hasn't helped me to be lied on. I became accident prone and slipped and hurt my knee because people was lying. And I asked them to remove my name off that program. People have tried to lie me into the wheelchair. They just lied me almost to death. And you shouldn't be a second-class citizen because you have to use public transportation and your voice can't be heard. And they're keeping me on this program lying to steal money. I mean, I go to church and I don't lie and steal in church when I'm coming to a job that would separate my belief in God to lie on the citizen to have my salary paid. I'd rather people sign this promissory note. Don't lie me to death. Don't lie me into a wheelchair and lie me into being crippled to have their salary paid. Because that's what's going on. God gave me great insight to look into this situation. I prayed about it. I said, this is ridiculous. Some people are lying to keep their salary paid. They don't see the burden that's placed on me. I'm 61 years old. I'm not that fragile. I'm fragile enough that I have a broken knee I'm walking on the anti-inflammatory. I slipped in the Venetian and injured my foot. It's not even healed properly because the foot doctor moved and I don't know where he is. But I have conditions here. I don't want to discuss all my conditions, but it's killing me to have to ride the bus and be lied on. And some people say, she ought to get her a job driving the bus. She ride the bus enough. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Commissioner.
Just for future discussion, potentially, could we get an update on the Uber Lyft project? And if why are we only testing within the service area versus what the needs are for outside? Can we get a copy of the audit results and then at some point have a discussion with regard to the recommendations that have been made? And an update on the cost of the free bus, the impact, if any, on the fare boxes, because that's how we expand our services based on what we take in on the revenue. And then finally, I'm on the Aging Commission, and they're quite right. We just hit #1 in the United States for 65 and older suicides. We're the highest in the United States, and it's basically due to isolation, is what we found out through the research. So I do think that there's some things that we can take a look at depending on how that conversation goes. Thank you.
Very good. Seeing and hearing no one, will close this portion of public comment. Thank you all. This meeting is adjourned.